So this is the first of a series of videos to kind of introduce you to the statistical program Stata that we're going to be using this semester. So in this video, I'm just going to give a really basic introduction to the interface of Stata. So what we're looking at on this screen once we open up Stata. In subsequent videos, I'll kind of show you how to run commands or hypothesis tests or regressions as we kind of progress. All right, so the first thing you notice is we have all these different kind of windows in here, and sometimes you might be missing one if you're using a different operating system. Sometimes it looks a little bit different, but if you want to bring them up, you can always click on the window up here to bring any of these things up to the front, which you might not see when you open it right away. Okay, so the first kind of part that we're going to talk about here, part of the interface we're going to talk about here, is this command line. So this is kind of like how a lot of programs worked before, where you kind of had to know the code and you'd write some code in this line, and that's telling Stata to execute or run some command. As you get more and more used to Stata, what's going to happen is you're going to get used to these basic commands that we're using over and over again. You might find it really quick just to write the commands in here once you get to kind of know the program. But we also see that we have all these series of menu. We have this menu bar here, the series of drop-down menus here, and there's another line here, another row here. And what these allow you to do is, instead of having to memorize this code, especially as you're first getting to know it, you can do a lot of the commands, or probably nearly every command we're going to see this semester, using these drop-down menus. So, for instance, if we wanted to open up a data set, which we'll talk about in the next video, click on File and Open, and then it will bring you a window up, and you can select which data set you want to open if it's in Stata format. So these drop-down menus are going to be really, really useful, especially at the beginning while we're kind of learning this program. And it's fairly intuitive, right? Like we want to make some graph. Well, we click on graphic, and we can see all these different kind of options we have to create. So if we want to create a two-way scatter plot, for instance, we can click on this two-way graph, and we see this kind of menu pop up. And in subsequent videos, I'll show you how to actually fill this out in order to create histograms or scatter plots or whatever we're looking at right now. Okay, so that's the command line as well as these drop-down menus. So this big kind of window in the middle is kind of the results window, you might call it. It's going to display the command you executed or you ran, as well as any results from that command. If there are any results to display, it will display them here. Over here, we see this history. This is just like the history in your browser. So as you run codes, run lines of code or run do files, which we'll talk about subsequently, we're going to see, this window get populated by those commands that we ran. If it's successful, it will be in black. If it's unsuccessful, we'll see that it becomes red. This other window here is variables. And so once we open up a data set, it will list all the variables in our data set, and this label column will, sometimes these variables are labeled, so it kind of gives you an idea of what that variable is or what it actually means if it's not obvious. Sometimes it'll be like if it's in like American dollars, in US dollars, it will say, or say years of schooling, because the variable name is education and just wants to make sure you understand that it's years of schooling as opposed to like whether you completed high school or college or whatever. All right, so that's the basic interface. One thing to keep in mind in Stata is it's all case sensitive. So if you name a variable, schooling with a capital S, and then you try to run a code that contains schooling with a lowercase s, you'll get an error. So we got to really be careful when creating variables and running code that we're using all lowercase, or we understand that when we name something with uppercase or a capital letter, we make sure we include that when we're typing out the name of the variable. Okay, so that's kind of it for this interface. In the next video, what I'm going to do is show you how to open up different types of data sets so we can actually, see these variable window get populated. Then we can understand how to create new variables and how to create these graphics and do hypothesis testings and things like that. But hopefully after this video, you kind of have an idea of like what you're looking at with this interface. And I know it can be a bit intimidating, but hopefully that helps make it a little less intimidating.